Hello, I am Dr. Ahmed Abdelal, and we are going to speak today about the properties and transcription of consonant phonemes. And that is based on Larry Small, Fundamentals of Phonetics, and Chapter 5 in particular, and the 2016 edition. So this is an overview of all consonants and the properties of consonants generally. So the difference between a vowel and a consonant is, as you have learned in Chapter 4, a vowel involves the entire vocal tract. The vocal tract is virtually symmetrical in many cases, but there is virtually no constriction, no obstruction along the vocal tract. So a vowel like E, O, A, that is, the vocal tract is wide open and there is virtually no obstruction. For a consonant, the condition to make it a consonant is that there is some kind of obstruction somewhere along the vocal tract. Keep in mind that the vocal tract is the pharynx, which is right above the vocal fold level, and it goes to the back of the nasal cavity. And then it is connected with the oral cavity and then the nasal cavity. So that constriction or obstruction along the vocal tract that we make when we produce a consonant phoneme can be partial constriction or complete constriction or complete obstruction. So when we describe a consonant, we describe it in terms of the constriction and in terms of the place where that constriction occurs. And we also describe it in terms of what the sound actually sounds like. So there are two big categories of consonants, very big categories of consonants. And one category, we call it sonorants or resonants, from resonate, because they resonate along the entire vocal tract. Sonorants or resonants. And the other group is obstruents. So sonorant sounds or resonant sounds, the term resonant and non-resonant is used in speech and hearing because we focus on how the sound resonates in the vocal tract. So it will be better to use it when we speak about communication sciences and disorders. Sonorants and obstruents are more used in the linguistics kind of domain. But in either case, either one is fine. So the sonorant group is characterized by less constriction, but more importantly, the sound, the consonant itself, resonates all through the entire vocal tract, either from the above the vocal folds to the lips, or from above the vocal folds to the nose. So we say or so the entire vocal tract is resonating. And these are three categories: nasal sounds, liquids, and glides. So these together make 7 sounds, and all of them are voiced. Voiced means that the vocal folds physically vibrate to make the sound. You can feel the vibration, you can test it. So when you say or versus if you say there is no activity here whatsoever. But if you say once you say zzz, now you know you can feel the vibration. So, but in the resonant category on the left, we have all sounds voiced. and each sound is unique by itself, period. So the first group of resonant sounds are the nasal sounds. And the second group is liquids, and the third group is glides. Glides have basically are two sounds that are blended together. So so that is as in yes, or EU, or so yes, you, and for example, say I got you. So yeah, and we use it looks like a J with a dot on it, like a J, but we call it, of course, yeah in phonetics. And then the other one is w. That's a glide that is made out of oo and then w, as in when. So again, when you describe all of these, they are all voiced. Now on the right, we have the second category, obstruents. They are marked by a greater constriction, and that constriction could be complete obstruction along the vocal tract, or could be partial. For complete obstruction, we have a group that has 7 sounds. And then fricatives are made by partial constriction, and we have 9 sounds in that category. And then we have the affricates, are a combination of a plosive, a stop, and the fricative. We have only 2 sounds. And then, so that is the category that blends stops and fricatives. So I said stops are 3 pairs and a single. Fricatives are 4 pairs and a single. And affricates are 1 pair of phonemes, consonants. And this category now has groups of voiced, voiceless, and voiced sounds. 2 sounds that are only different in voicing, in that the vocal folds vibrate for one sound, as in z, and they do not vibrate for the other sound, s, but s and z are exactly produced in the same spot, and they sound exactly, they are fricatives, and they cause friction, and they have constriction and everything. However, the only difference is that the vocal folds work for one, we call it voiced, and the vocal folds do not work for the other one. We call that voiceless. We commonly use the V minus means voiceless, and then we use V plus means voiced. So this is the category where we have, these pairs, and every pair that is different only in voicing and agrees in the manner and the place is called a cognate pair. A cognate pair. 2 sounds that go together, but again, the only condition is that they must be different in voicing. If they are different in anything else, we do not call them cognate pairs. So we have this, and every pair is made out of 1 voiceless sound and 1 voiced sound. This is why I have 3 pairs, and then a single that is only voiceless. Fricatives 4 pairs, each one is voiceless, 1 is voiced, and then affricates is 1 voiceless and 1 voiced. So you notice in this category we have again a group of sounds that are voiceless and a group of sounds that are voiced, as opposed to the left where you have just voiced, all of them. So now, when we describe a consonant, we want every consonant to have unique characteristics, so that when you say these characteristics, you identify and pinpoint a single sound, so that these characteristics do not match any other sound. Just like we did with vowels. When you describe put a particular description out there, then you say, for example, this sound is a low back tense unrounded vowel. Only one in English, only a single sound matches these characteristics. So that is why we use these descriptions, in order to make every single sound unique and to be able to identify it and pinpoint it exactly, so that only that sound accepts these characteristics. So when we describe any consonant now, we describe it in terms of voicing. Is it voiced or voiceless? We describe the consonant in terms of placement. Where is it produced? And then we describe a consonant in terms of manner. It is important that you give the three descriptors in sequence in the same order: V, P, M. Voicing first, manner, placement, and then last you say manner. Because that is important for your quizzes, because the quizzes are programmed this way, so that if you get one of them out of, you don't get them correctly, then you are going to make the whole question is going to come out incorrect. So voicing is first, placement, and then manner. So I'd like to refer you to table 5.1, page 112. In terms of manner, manner refers to the way the sound, what the quality of the sound itself. Does it make a friction? Is it a complete stop? Is it a combination of a stop and a friction? So based on this categorization of manner, what sounds sound like, we have these categories. We have first the lower three that I explained. These are called the resonant sounds. Together they are all voiced, and we have nasals. In terms of manner, they sound nasal. They have a nasal quality to them. Glides, they sound like you are going from one sound and gliding to the other. Yeah, yeah. Actually, it should be up, yeah, and going down, yeah. Because in the quadrilateral, you have E first on top, a high, and then E comes lower. So it will be gliding from the top, a top vowel to a lower one, yeah. For U, E, W, as in white, also you go from the back, the high back vowel U, and then E, you go down to the mid front vowel W. So that is how these sounds are. And then you look at, in terms of also manner, if the sound is a stop, which means it's complete, the airway is completely blocked. And depending on how you view this, if you want to focus more on what happens after the sound is exploded, or before the sound is exploded, if you focus on the airway obstruction itself. So you can call this sound either a stop sound or a plosive sound. Let's track them. I like to keep reviewing these frequently, and I hope that you do the same, because by the end of the class, you must have everything, all the vowels and their descriptions, and all the consonants and their descriptions in here. So the plosive or stop sounds include, let's track them from the front to the back. They include, first, try any sound with your lips that can shut down the airway. So you're going to find that p, p, or b, b. Each sound, you shut the airway completely, p, b. And we call these, in terms of the manner, we call them either a stop or a plosive. But because we produce them by both lips, that's where you make the sounds, we call them also bilabial. That's the placement, bilabial. So far we say p, b are bilabial stops or bilabial plosives. Then what else do we need? The third quality is voicing. So the p, I'd like you to compare the p and b. Tell me which one is voiceless, which one is voiced. P, 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 p. There's no activity for the p, as in pull. But when you say b, b, as in banana, banana, b, b, you can feel the vibration here. And the vibration carries even on to, you can feel it at your lips, even though the vibration comes lower at the vocal folds. So for the p and b, now we call them, for example, the p is a voiceless bilabial stop, or voiceless bilabial plosive. And then the b, the same description except you start with voiced. Voiced bilabial stop. So what else for the stops? Where else can you stop along the vocal tract? Go back, and at the alveolar ridge you are able to say t and d, t, d. So these are two stops. We call, because they occur, or they are made by the tongue tip pressing against the alveolar ridge. They are called alveolar stops. T, d. And then go back. Where else can you stop or block the airway? You are going to come here at, when you say k and g, between the back, the dorsum of the tongue, the posterior part of the tongue, and the velum. So the tongue elevates, goes up and back, and then that's going to give you the k and g. These are called velar stops. And then depending on which one is voiced or voiceless, you put that at the beginning. Where else can we make a stop? So we got p, b, t, d, k, g. Now go back all the way to the vocal folds. The space between the vocal folds, what do you call it? The glottis. So in between, and that space between the vocal folds, you just slam them together and go away. You do not vibrate them. In order for the vocal folds to vibrate, you have to bring the arytenoids cartilages, bring them together, and adduct the vocal folds like this, closing, touching each other. No air is going out. And then with this fixated, then the vocal folds are going to vibrate in the middle by being pushed away by the air. Okay, so that is the air, the vibration, the cycle of vibration. So in that case, we are not making the glottal stop. And we say ka and ba and. So in that case, the vocal folds they have arytenoidal abduction, and then you just slam them and go away again. So in that case, there is no vibration. And that is when you shut them down and block, that is a stopping, or you stop the flow of the air and then immediately open again. And again, just remember what vibration is like. So for that reason, the glottal stop, which is that similar to the question mark without the dot underneath, that is the symbol, IPA symbol for the glottal stop. So again, three pairs. Two pairs bilabial, two pairs alveolar, two pairs velar, and one pair glottal. 7 of them. Then the fricatives, that is the biggest group. Fricative sounds are made by a partial constriction, where the air, as it escapes through the constriction, it makes a hissing sound. It makes a friction. So let's track them again, and if you use this strategy, you are going to really recall your sounds, because you might be asked to name them, for example, all of them as a list or whatever. So you go from the beginning at the level of the lips, and you are gonna get two sounds by contact between the lower lip and the maxillary incisors. So you say and so labio-dental. And then you get two other sounds with the tongue between the teeth. Th and th, th and th. So these are called lingua-dental, or some cases they call them dental, but lingua-dental is more common. Then you go down and you go up inside. You are going to find at the alveolar ridge, you can make the s, z, s, z. So these two are alveolar fricatives. Then above, just go a little bit beyond the alveolar ridge. You are going to say shh. That's at the boundary between the alveolar ridge and the hard palate. So shh or sh, sh, sh. So these sounds are called either palatal. That's your easiest way. Just call them palatal. Some call them lingua palatal. Some call them post-alveolar. Okay? Palatal, just make your life easy, call them palatal. Another one, in terms of friction, you go back, so you have th, the, and then sh, s, z, and then sh, z. That's 4 pairs, 4 cognate pairs. And then you go down all the way to the vocal folds at the glottis, and you are going to make this sound. So the vocal folds are approximated, not completely closed, and then you push a column of air through to make that friction. And because that friction is produced at the glottis, we call it a glottal fricative. And then you take one voiceless stop and mix it, combine it with one voiceless fricative, and you make a voiceless affricate. And that sound is t, t, t is an alveolar voice, a voiceless alveolar stop. Release the stop. So we say you block, and you release that stop into a fricative, which is, that fricative is shh. So you go cat, shh, shh. Okay, so that is your voiceless affricate, one single voiceless affricate, and the cognate of it, the voiced affricate, is the same. The voiced form of the t is d, as in kid. D is the voiced form or cognate of t. Then the voiced cognate of sh is j. So you take d and j, you make j, as in page, cage, judge, fudge. So these are your 2 affricate sounds, ch and j. And then, as I explained, the resonant category, the nasals, glides, and liquids. Again, quickly, nasals, the three, and then glides are ya, wa, and liquids are And the names are just given, to give us the best description of what they would sound like. So that's in terms of manner. So please go to page 112 and complete. Look at the table 5.1. There are many tables for classifying consonants, and there is one that I am using here. That's it gives us good information, and I'm going to look at every sound, and then I'll give you an assignment to do by looking at that table. In terms of placement, again, notice I'll be repeating a lot of what I have said, and this is going to help you consolidate your knowledge of the material. So again, placement refers to where the sound is made. The sound, the consonant, can be made by the two lips, and in that case, as in p, b. So two lips means two, bilabial, p, b. What's another sound that's bilabial? Can you think of one? You got it right if you said And there's another one that you could get. W, w, w. So these are the bilabial sounds. P, b, w. And then, in terms of placement, you can also make, notice that we take them from front to back. You can also make sounds by contact between the lower lip and the top front teeth. We call them the maxillary incisors. So we call these sounds labiodental. Labiodental. Whenever there's a word, you combine two words, and the first word ends with an L, you take the L out and make it into an O, like oral motor. You say oral motor. Labial, and then dental, labiodental, and so on. Labiodental, I'd like you to think, what are the sounds that are labiodental? Basically, f and v. And then dental, this category sometimes is called lingua dental. Sometimes it's called interdental. I like you to know their different names, because if you find one text using one, or in speech and hearing they might be using one name, and in linguistics they might be using another one, in phonetics will. So any one of these names, as long as it's a recognized name, that is fine. So interdental is more of it gives you more of a better description. That's more common. And then, again, in terms of where sounds can be produced, or groups of sounds are produced, at the alveolar ridge. Contact between the tip of the tongue and the alveolar ridge will give you alveolar sounds, and let's see how many alveolar sounds there are. What are the sounds that you can make with the tongue tip in contact with the alveolar ridge? So you get t, d, you can get s, z, you can get l, you can get So we got 6 alveolar sounds. That's a very important landmark. You need to know it. The palatal sounds are sounds that are made when the tongue tip is, or the tongue is touching the area behind the alveolar ridge, right at the beginning, the anterior segment of the hard palate. So when you say that's a what do you call it? A palatal sound. When you say sh, sh, these are palatal sounds. And then velar sounds are the k and g and w. You do not see it, but your tongue is rising in the back and approximating the velum. And then glottal stops are 2 which are huh. I'm sorry, not stops, glottal sounds. Huh and as in cotton or button. And then, because the tongue is a major articulator, the tongue gets in contact with various areas to make sounds, and frequently are going to see the name of some categories as lingua, like for example, lingua dental. And you have sometimes lingua palatal, sometimes lingua velar. But make your life easier. Use these categories: bilabial sounds, labiodental, interdental, alveolar, palatal, velar, and glottal. So that's in terms of placement. In terms of voicing, as I explained, the consonant can be voiceless or voiced. And when two sounds are together in agreement on placement and in manner, like p, b, and they only are different in voicing, we call them cognates. So you can use cognates, for example, to make minimal pairs. We discussed minimal pairs back at the beginning of the course. Minimal pairs are two words that are different only in a single phoneme. That phoneme can be in the beginning, middle, or end. Like when you say fan, and then you go van. So now you have a minimally contrastive word pair, or a minimal pair, like two words that are only different in a single phoneme. That phoneme can be anywhere at the beginning, middle, or end. So constantly we make, and for treatment purposes, we make word pairs out of phonemes that are cognates. So these are the stops or the plosive sounds. As I explained, the p, b, these are bilabial stops, and t, d, they are alveolar stops. K, g are velar stops, and the a is a glottal stop. So describing, let me go back to the chart, and we are going to describe most of them. I wouldn't have to go and read, all of the details here, but I'll stop by just and review quickly in case something is, I neglected something. So I'm going to look at the chart here. Let's come here, and let's take this out for the time being. Take it away. You look at this chart, focus on the descriptors we have used. Here's the placement, here is manner, go down, and voicing is here. So you begin with voicing first, and then you go to the placement, V, P, and then the manner, like a triangle. You don't have to worry about, okay, let's begin with the lower category that I explained at first. The nasals, liquids, and glides, these again are called sonorants or resonants. And you have the nasal category here. You find only 3 nasals. All of this category is sonorants, again, as I mentioned, are all, as you see, voiced, 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 voiced. So let's describe each one, and this is what you will do with every single one of them, and you have to keep it in your mind. So, how do you describe it? You do not need to give sentences. Your description only consists of 3 single words used in sequence. So, is voiced, as a voiced, bilabial, nasal. These are the 3 characteristics. Voiced, bilabial, nasal. How about So voiced, alveolar, nasal. How about as in king? So again, voiced, velar is the tongue and the back of the tongue and the velum approximate, but the velum drops down to meet the back of the tongue. So that is a voiced, velar, nasal. Then the liquids, O is a voiced, alveolar liquid. Simply call it liquid. Voiced alveolar liquid. Then you have the L. So voiced, alveolar liquid, but to distinguish it from the other sound, because both N and L are alveolar sounds, and both of them are liquids. You need to find a little category that can differentiate between one of them. Differentiate one from the other. So we say the L is differentiate the L from the So it is fine. You could actually you could just simply say the L by itself as a voiced alveolar liquid, and then you come to this one because it's not alveolar. So the R, we use the regular R in our course. So this one is used by some to mean the American R, but for us we just use the regular R. So the is voiced, palatal, liquid. And again, please, you could just the palatal and postalveolar, blend them together, and we are going to go by that. So blend them together into palatal or postalveolar. Either one is fine. However, palatal is more common. So all of these sounds and this one, are palatal. So voiced, palatal, liquid. Then we have the W, that is the only sound, only consonant that has two placements. The only consonant when you describe, you're going to use 4 words. So you're going to call this voiced, bilabial, velar. Voiced, bilabial, velar, and then glide. Ya is a voiced, palatal, glide. So I would like you to use the same way that I described, and you describe these out loud to yourself. Make sure that you have this information here. So P, for example, voiceless, bilabial, stop. B, voiced, bilabial, stop. And so practice like this, and that should be straightforward. There are different tables that represent the information in different ways. I find this one particularly helpful. But again, there's no reason why you don't use another one if you wish. Basically, they say the same information. So we explained the voicing. We explained the stopping, and went over the 7 consonants that are stops or plosives. We have one cognate, p, d, second cognate, t, d, and the third cognate, k, g, and then a single. So in the case of the voiceless sounds, these have a single source of production. They are made with an obstruction along in the vocal, on the vocal tract. However, the vocal folds are not doing anything. So there's a single source of obstruction, and that is in the oral tract itself. No relationship to the vocal folds. Then, if the sound is voiced, then it has two sources of production. One is the constriction in the oral cavity or the vocal tract, and the other source is the vocal folds. So that voiced sound like zzz, you have the hissing from the front, but you also have the vibration at the vocal folds, by the vocal folds. So voiced phonemes always have two sources of production, while voiceless have a single source. And again, here I'm contrasting the cognates, b and b, and then we want to also contrasting the t and the cognates. T, in some cases, it is, and the spelling t is pronounced in a way as to make it into a d, but not a full d, but the d that will be slight and short. So, for example, when you say dime, dime, or kid, kid, the sound is fully made and longer. But when you say something like later, you don't say later. And in American English, I'm speaking about American English, you make the t into a d, later, later. And so what you do is your tongue tip hits the alveolar ridge and vocal folds are activated, and you make a very short d. So we call that the tap. And the tap is a J that is flipped upside down and back. So instead of the J, instead of the J facing this way, it is flipped like that. That will be upside and backward J. But we call that the tap. So that is your symbol. And it's just because we don't have it on the keyboard, this is what I am using, but you will see it in the IPA chart. And then in transcription in the website I gave you, you should have that, all the sounds in IPA. So that is a voiced sound, and there are certain rules where you can produce the tap. For example, when you have a t and t and nt together, followed by an n, for example. And sometimes when the t ends a word or syllable, like cotton. No, I'm sorry, this is not the case. I went to another one. I'm going to show you. So, kitten, you might say kitten. Cat. I apologize. I was still speaking about the tap. I flipped to a whole different sound. Let me backtrack. Yeah. So the tap, you make it, for example, when you have the rule for it is when you have either the t, double t, and in between two vowels, or d, double d, and between two vowels. So when you say riddle, or ladder, or stellar, so you do not make a full d. You just hit the alveolar ridge, go away, and that is gonna make the t into a voiced alveolar sound that we know as the tap, which is a shorter form of the d. The kahanga, as I explained, are cognates because one of them is voiceless and one is voiced. And then the glottal stop, that one doesn't have a pair to go with it, and it is produced at the glottis. So it is produced typically in words like ba'en and k'in, catnip, Batman, but put, sleep. But this but and put and sleep, they are more dialectal. There are certain people, certain dialects that will make them into a glottal stop. But commonly, you know, there are many dialects that just say the t as a t in these cases. And here are the nasals again, and how they are produced is that the velum, here is the back, the posterior pharyngeal wall, the velum is like this, so the velum is lowered and the air exits at this in the space between the back of the velum and the posterior pharyngeal wall, and we call this the velopharyngeal port. Velopharyngeal port. So we said the velopharyngeal port is open when you make the nasal sounds. There is a bilabial nasal, there's an alveolar nasal, and there is a velar nasal. All of them are voiced. We have a rule here that if you recall, when we discussed syllables earlier in the chapter in consonants, vowels, we learned that in order to have a syllable, you must have a vowel that serves as a nucleus of the syllable. However, there are some consonants that serve as a nucleus of a vowel, and these are the n. These are called syllabic. Syllabic, syllabic, n. So they can be the nucleus. Please go back to chapter 4 and review the information about the syllable structure and refresh your knowledge of the syllabic consonants. So when consonants are produced in the same location, they are called homorganic. Or organ means organ. Homorganic means they have the same organs and they are produced at the same place. So all of these are homorganic in the sense that all of them involve the same organs and are produced, of course, at the alveolar ridge. So here's the velum, and you can see the velopharyngeal port. What is happening here is explanation of what this is the normal adenoid status, and next to the adenoids on the side you're going to have the eustachian tube, and sometimes when the adenoids are enlarged, they make obstruction along the velopharyngeal port, and they cause the person to snore, and they cause less ventilation for the eustachian tubes, and that causes middle ear infections and the whole sequel of cognitive and behavioral and linguistic and speech problems. So please complete the assignment on page 159 and the assignment 551. And that is in addition, of course, to what you have as assignments. So I just put this here for both classes, just the day class and your class. And the fricative consonants, as I explained, they are 4 pairs, 4 cognate pairs and a single. And again, there are 2 labiodental pairs. There are 2 interdental or linguadental pairs. There are 2 alveolar pairs, 2 palatal pairs and 1 glottal single. And we know that the f is a voiceless cognate of the v. The th is a voiceless cognate of the. The alveolars, z, alveolar fricatives, s and z are cognates each other. Commonly, when we have the s written as in the plural form, it has a rule. For example, if the last consonant of the word or the last sound of a word is voiceless, and you put the s added to it, then the s is gonna be pronounced as a voiceless phoneme, like this. Say kit, kit. Now put an s to add an s to say more than one kit. It will be kits. That is a rule. So it doesn't matter even if you write it differently. For example, the German name K-A-T-T-Z, cat. How do you say? You don't say cat z. No, you say cats. You make the z letter into an s phoneme because the t is voiceless. And when the end of the word is voiced, then it's gonna make the s letter pronounced as a voice phoneme. Even if it's an s, it will sound like a z. So when you say kid, the d is voiced, so the s letter is gonna be z, kids. So that's an important rule that you need to watch for. And that results from a process called co-articulation. And the sh and zh are palatal fricatives, and they are cognates of each other. One is voiceless, one is voiced. And we know about the h as a glottal fricative. So the affricates, ch and j, the ch, as I explained, is a voiceless cognate of the j, and these are a combination of a stop and the fricative, and the stop is released directly into the fricative. So you make the t and stop the airway and release into a fricative, ch, and then you get the voiced form of the t and the voiced cognate or form of the sh, and then you make the other sound j, as in judge. This is as in church or as in chair. And these are, again, the consonants, the category of the sonorant or resonance phonemes. Y, w are the glides, l, are the liquids. So the glides, y, e, are made out of two different, actually, vowels that result in a constriction as you change from one to the other. So that's why sometimes these are called semi-vowels. But we typically just classify them as vowels for our purposes here. I'm sorry, as consonants for our purposes here. So y is actually e, and then you go down. E, and then a. Yeah, as in yes, yet. W, you begin with a u, with an u, and then go down forward, woo, as in white. Sometimes you have the upside down w, that is the Southern American or the in the southern part or Southern American dialect. This is where you say where, you say it where. I'm exaggerating, of course, but the puff of air before the w, why, where. So that is, if it is done, the w is produced with air coming out to make a friction, then it is the upside down w. Otherwise, the plain w, as in win, is just a regular w. This is what the w sounds like, looks like in terms of placement. This is where the tongue rises and goes back as if you are saying ooh, the same. and then you switch after the position of the tongue switches so that your tongue goes forward to say the ooh. And this is again why this sound has two placements. The lips are gonna be rounded and contribute to ooh, ooh, ooh. And then at the same time, the dorsum, posterior part of the tongue, and the velum, get together to make that sound as a velar. So that sound is bilabial velar, and it's voiced, and then it is a glide. So the is a retroflex sound in American English, retroflex sound. And the Spanish is a trilled R, trilled. But for us, we use the regular symbol, IPA, just like the regular English sound. And the way it is made, the is retroflex, means the tongue rises and then curves backwards, and then the air hits in that curve, and then it goes around and above the actually above the tongue tip and on both sides, like but sometimes, like I said, you might see it as upside down, and we do not use this constantly. We just use the plain And then the it has two forms. Of course, the tongue tip rises to meet the alveolar ridge. That makes it an alveolar sound. Ooh, ooh. However, one way to say one form of the the tongue goes like this. And another form, the tongue just makes a hump and goes. Like when you say, let's say, little. And when you say pool, it is velarized. Like the back of the tongue rises to meet the velum. To be very close to the velum. Sometimes in linguistics, they might call that velarized dark L, and the other L, they are more of the alveolar only kind of, you call it the light L. But for us as in phonetics, as clinicians, we simply say velarized and just the unvelarized or something like that. So that is it for all the consonants, and we are going to spend quite a few classes on consonants, because most of the work is going to be exercises and practice. And the idea is to get every single sound, all the characteristics, all the qualities right here. You'll be walking with that information around. Because when you are going to be doing transcription, you are not going to just, go back and say, I'm going to consult my phonetics book. You need to have everything in mind. And you need also to be able to classify all these different consonants and vowels. The bulk of the course is vowels and consonants. And then, of course, everything else moves very quickly. Okay, so please do practice and follow up on the exercises. The best way is to practice out loud when you can, and to complete exercises every day. That will make you really have a good sense of phonetics, and that will develop your auditory skills to be able to differentiate between one phoneme and another. So thank you.